Hi, I'm Mark Gaylor, Sony Imaging Ambassador. Now, I've written camera manuals for a range of Sony Alpha cameras, both APS-C and full frame cameras. Now, the feedback I'm getting for these they're much better than the online version, and this has helped a lot of Sony Alpha photographers get the best possible performance out of their cameras. So without much further ado, let's head over to the camera manuals themselves, and I'll give you a guided tour of some of the benefits of downloading one of these Sony Alpha camera manuals. Now, I've written camera manuals or eBooks for a range of 14 Sony cameras, right from the full frame cameras through to the APS-C or crop sensor cameras. I even have a book for the RX100 Mark VII pocket camera. Now, the primary focus for these camera manuals is the camera setup side of things, and these are to install workflows to avoid missing shots. Now, I shoot a broad range of subjects, from portraits of humans, animals, right through to action images, whether it be sports or birds in flight, right through to landscape images. Now, I need to be able to recall these groups of settings exceptionally quickly so I don't miss the decisive moment. Now, I call this my PAL workflow: portraits, action and landscapes. These are groups of settings that can be recalled from the shoot mode dial once the camera is set up, and this is a workflow that ensures that I rarely miss my shot. Now, there's at least 10 primary settings for each of those areas, whether it be portrait, action or landscapes. Once we have those settings in place, we're going to be creating reliable sharp focus images that are well exposed. Now, I can quickly show you how to switch from human detection through to animal or bird in just 1 or 2 seconds once that camera is set up correctly. And I'll also showcase in the ebooks when to use a zone focus area or whether to leave it in the wide focus area, when to use tracking or whether to reduce the focus area to a spot, and all of this will make complete sense once you've digested the information in the ebooks or camera manuals. Now, for instance, I will primarily start with my camera settings in zone, and I can pick out a single subject in a very crowded area reliably quickly just using the zone focus area and IAF. Now, my camera settings for portrait will always ensure that my subjects don't have to remain static. Now, I shoot at events and sporting events where the people I'm photographing are often moving and very rarely, if ever, standing still. Now, I'll also outline some of my workflows for shooting with fill flash, or whether to use workflows that have the flash off camera. So I'll guide you as to the correct setup for both of those instances. Now, I'll also showcase my action settings. Now, these are really important to get all of these action settings in place. If you miss some of these action settings, your hit rate is going to plummet. You're going to get far fewer sharp images if you don't have all of the correct settings in place. Now, there's going to be at least 10 major settings again, and you're going to need all of these to get reliably sharp sequences of images all in sharp focus. And of course, all of these settings will be suitable for capturing birds in flight. Now, I'm not talking about grabbing one image in a sequence of images sharp. You'll possibly have all of the images in a sequence pin sharp with the correct settings. I'll also discuss and showcase some of the subject tracking settings, so that if you ever get things obscuring your primary target, the camera always reliably sticks with the focus on your primary target, and so this will give you a much higher hit rate in most instances. And of course, I will specialize in very rapidly moving subjects, such as this dog running rapidly towards the camera. Now, I'll show you when to use wide focus areas, but also when it's best to reduce the size of the focus area to a tracking expand spot, such as this picture of this owl just taking flight here. And of course I'll also discuss the appropriate steady shot settings. Of course steady shot needs to be switched from mode 1 to mode 2 or mode 2 to mode 3 in specific instances, such as this MotoGP shot of Marc Marquez, a former world champion racing here. Now I'll also show you some memory settings where we can, rather than moving the shoot mode dial between 1, 2 and 3, I can just hold down a custom key to recall a group of up to 11 settings very quickly. So I may have been shooting a picture of this bird, a portrait setting, but now I know it's going to take a sudden lunge to catch a fish, and I'll just quickly recall my 11 action settings so that I don't miss this decisive moment. And of course this also is a great feature for when we might be shooting a landscape on a beach, and suddenly I hear a dog running in the background. I can quickly turn around, hold down a custom key, recall my 11 sport settings, and reliably capture this Dalmatian in full flight. I'll also showcase my optimum settings for shooting landscapes handheld, and also move over to the optimum settings for shooting landscapes with the camera on a tripod, and switch from autofocus to using manual focus with the hyperfocal distance settings for maximum depth of field. I'll also showcase the optimum settings for shooting classic street style images, and also some atypical street styles, such as this very shallow depth of field that I've captured of this person in the street with a spray can here. I'll also showcase my optimum settings for shooting astro, and also explain in the ebook, and also the linked movies that are linked to the ebook, the differences between shooting with DSLR and mirrorless cameras. And of course this comes down to the live view display settings. Now this often helps us with mirrorless cameras get to be able to pre-visualize both the exposure and depth of field, but there are certain instances where we do need to disable live view display, and I'll outline those reasons in the camera manuals. I'll also go in depth into choosing and selecting the optimum exposure. There are some instances where we do want to use exposure compensation, because the camera is in danger in this particular instance of overexposing the highlights, so we need to use a negative exposure compensation to protect maximum detail in those highlights. And of course the opposite is true. When we have images with dominant light tones, we need to prevent the camera from underexposing. So I'll map out the reasons why we choose these exposure compensations when working with mirrorless cameras. And there are going to be some instances where the subject brightness range exceeds the dynamic range of our sensors, and then I'll showcase how we can bracket settings to get these optimum bracketed HDR images, such as this transformer building that I've captured here in Hong Kong. Now I'll showcase how to set up the camera, including the custom key settings for both stills photography and also movie capture as well. We can have different custom keys for both of those modes of the camera. And of course I'll go into choosing the optimum settings for the FN menu, the custom keys as I've outlined earlier, plus the optimum settings to have in the My menu. Now all of these settings can be encapsulated and recorded onto your memory card as a single camset file. This camset feature allows me to set up other people's camera remotely. For instance, on my Patreon site you can download camset files for a range of Sony Alpha cameras, such as the Alpha 7R4, Alpha 7R4A, the Alpha 9 II, the Alpha 1 and the new Alpha 7 IV camera. In fact, I can set up your entire camera as outlined in the ebook from a file you can download from my Patreon site. Now this Patreon site doesn't just have the ebooks. It has very active Q&A forums, the availability to download camset files for those cameras I've just outlined. I do record 1 hour masterclass seminars for my patrons. There's over 20 hours of seminars to watch. I also include raw files for cameras and lenses that I've reviewed, and those reviews will be available on YouTube. But you can see the actual raw images used to prepare that camera or lens review. Okay, and there are additional ebooks, not just the camera specific ebooks, but there are ebooks to deal with various aspects of the holistic photography workflow. And these are just some of the member benefits by when you subscribe to Patreon. And here are just a few of the masterclass seminars, all of the way from digitizing analog film, an Inspire video, a 1 hour masterclass on resolution and noise, and a masterclass on Lightroom in black and white. Let's take a closer look at what you will find inside of one of these ebooks. Now, at the beginning of each ebook, there will be a contents page. Now, these will be hyperlinks, so you can jump straight through to the section that you're most interested in finding out more information about. At the back of each ebook there will be links to video tutorials that will give you a lot more information about a particular topic that you're wanting to find more about. Now, one of these video tutorials, for instance, will be about lens choice. Now, lens choice will be different for each person, so I'll help you make up that decision about whether perhaps to use a zoom lens, such as maybe this 12-24 f2.8 G Master, or whether to choose maybe one of the lighter, cheaper prime lenses, such as the FE 20mm f1.8 G. Now, this doesn't have the angle of view as that 12-24, but of course there are workarounds for this, and I'll outline the additional equipment that would help you achieve that wider angle of view, such as this illustration here, where I'm getting a 14mm angle of view from just using that 20mm prime lens. Now, I'll also help you make decisions about perhaps which 50mm to purchase. These are 5 of just the 6 options available to an alpha photographer, a full frame alpha photographer, and of course each one will have their upsides and downsides, so I will make sure that you choose the most appropriate lens for your specific workflow. Of course, I'll help you set up the camera. There are some very confusing aspects of camera setup, such as the image quality settings, how to get a particular file format going to a specific card, whether it be RAW to slot 1 and JPEGs to slot 2, or RAW and JPEG to slot 1. Of course, the configurations are almost endless, and I'll help you and guide you through the camera setup that suits your particular workflows. In the ebooks, I'll also map out some of the accessories, such as these Bluetooth accessories that Sony make, right from the Bluetooth remote to the microphones and the Bluetooth grip here featured underneath this Sony Alpha camera. I'll look at some of the common accessories as well, which we perhaps never should go onto location without, such as spare batteries and spare memory cards. I'll also look at Lightroom Classic workflows, so to give you the idea of how you can then do post-production workflows, maybe when you're on location. I'll also look at some mobile editing workflows, maybe using tablets instead of laptops, and using some equipment that needed to get that the files that you're capturing onto your mobile device, whether it be a tablet or a mobile phone. I'll also look at post-production workflows, so we can manage high ISO images such as this tree frog that I've captured at ISO 5000. I'll look at additional software, not just Lightroom as well, so I'll look at maybe standalone pieces of software such as Topaz Denoise AI and also DxO Pure Raw 2. Okay, so if I've spiked your interest about some of these ebooks, again, just head over to patreon.com/Mark Galia to get more information about what's included with your Patreon subscription. So if you'd like to access one of these camera manuals, just head over to patreon.com/Mark Gaylor. Now just remember there are no contracts or commitments, so you can be in and out and just subscribe for a single month and take the ebooks that you need. And this will help you get the absolute best possible performance from your Sony Alpha camera. I'm Mark Gaylor, Sony Imaging Ambassador.